Right, so I'm joined by the great All Black, Justin Marshall. One of my favourite All Blacks, actually.
Oh, wow.
That's good.
Now I do feel like I'm in good company.
Yes, well...
A compliment. I've got one fan.
That's good. You've got a load of fans, haven't you? Don't say that's awesome.
It just depends on when I open my mouth and what comes out of it, mate.
Well, that's what we're going to find out. On the quarterfinals, on this side especially, it's kind of played out how we thought it potentially would do.
Yep.
And Ireland, I'll be honest, I didn't see Ireland being as good as they have been. When you're watching this Ireland team, are you thinking this is one of the greatest teams we've seen that haven't won a World Cup? Because we will get onto that, but in terms of how they're playing, what have you made of Ireland?
I've made of Ireland the one team that I didn't want to see the All Blacks meet this early in the tournament. And that is the biggest compliment I can give them. They are a very dangerous side. The All Blacks have had a canter since the French game. So they haven't been hardened like Ireland have. They've been faultless. They're the number one team in the world. They're the best defensive team in the world, but yet they score tries. And I think when you look at the balance and the way that they play, you know, France have got a bit of flair, but they're tough now. And South Africa are just physical and tough, but they can open you up. But Ireland, in terms of balance, their short passing game, their players that they've got in form, like Bundy Aki's probably in the form of his life at the moment, so is James Lowe. The back three are dangerous, the centres are good, the loose forward trios like Omani's playing out of his skin.
He really
you know,
is.
like honestly, he's playing his best rugby. The tight five are tough, the props play, they tug Furlong and that. Like, there's no faults or chinks in their armour. So I've made a lot out of the fact that they've been the best team in the world. 16 games on the bounce.
17 now.
17 now, is it? Wow, yeah. So, you know, you don't do that without being a very, very good side and a complete side. So, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I wasn't sure, but I feel very sure now that they are going to be a tough nut to crack.
Yeah. One thing that surprised me, and I don't know if it surprised you, and I say this having played against Ireland 8 or 9 times, having played in the Champions Cup against Leinster, Munster, Connacht, Ulster, and I've always thought the support of the Irish team were good. I have never experienced a stadium like it, even for the Scotland game, but more so the South Africa-Ireland game. Have you been surprised by the amount of support that's come over?
Oh, it's been incredible. I saw the game on TV against South Africa, but my colleagues from Supersport who I'm here working with, they went and they said never in a stadium. I was there for the opening game, the French All Black game, and that stadium was bouncing, particularly when the French finally got their shit together and got ahead, you know. But equally, they said that atmosphere, the Irish game, they were, what, zombie, isn't it? That's been
the
going,
Cranberries.
Yeah.
You know what? The cultural relevancy around all of this stuff in rugby now is that shot up the charts. We'll just say it went to #1 globally. Yeah, but you're right, the zombie song.
Oh yeah, and they were singing it again at the weekend. They sang it after the South African game, and this was carrying on 20 minutes post-match. But to hear guys that are in TV that have played rugby before, you know, the likes of Jean de Villiers, John Smith, you know, being at a stadium, Brian Habana, and they saying they have never seen an atmosphere like that. The Irish crowd and fans seem to have just galvanised around this team because the team is successful, and I think they need to feel that the team has the faith in their fans to believe that they can win this, and so they've done that by coming and supporting. It's incredible.
There's been an emotional shift around the All Blacks where the enigma and the superhero cape seems to no longer be that. Am I right in saying that or not? Is that just a very superficial kind of take on it?
I think you've hit it bang on. That's been the chat, hasn't it? And look, I don't ever feel that teams feared playing against us. Like, fear is not in a rugby player's DNA. It doesn't matter whether you play for the All Blacks, Scotland, Australia, whatever team fronts, you know, Tonga, whatever it might be. You relish the opportunity to play the best in the world, the best individuals, the best teams. So I don't think fear was ever the right word. It was uncertainty, because All Black history creates uncertainty in teams. You know, the fact that Scotland have never beaten the All Blacks, there's uncertainty of whether you can actually do it. You know, like Ireland have overcome that, and they now are certain that they can beat the All Blacks because they've started to do it regularly. And I think that yeah, absolutely. When teams finally crack that, then they don't have that burden anymore. You know, if I could relate it to a team at the moment that is struggling with it, 100% it's Wales. Now, they haven't beaten the All Blacks in basically nearly 70 years. And I've seen games recently in the last decade where they should have won. But when they had the opportunity to win the game and grab it by the scruff of the neck, they went insular. I think a lot of that has been dissipated in the last decade, which is a shame because this team has been responsible for that. You know, losing to Ireland for the first time in the Test series in New Zealand, losing to Argentina for the first time in our history, record score against the Springboks. That eliminates what you're talking about, doesn't it? It means that uncertainty's not there, so teams believe they can win. If you've got belief, you can do anything.
What is the emotional driver for the All Blacks then? Is it to prove people wrong?
I think they'll go in as underdogs. And
Yeah.
Do you agree?
I agree, 100% agree.
Yeah, and so because of that will fuel them. The other side of it is, I guess, they knew this was coming, and they knew that the challenge of what Ireland gave them over a year ago in New Zealand really hurt, and they'll still be seething about that. So that'll fuel them as well. But more than anything, I think it's that fact that they are going to be a team that will have to slip under the radar and have to go in there and perform what many would think to be the unexpected, which is win.
One of the greatest things about rugby, and I am an emotional guy, I was an emotional player.
Are you really?
Yeah, I am, believe it or not. As slow as I'm walking now,
Yeah.
and as cumbersome as I look, emotion.
Were you teary? Did you tear up at times?
I did,
or?
Yeah. I reckon I would have been in a position to maybe even beat the All Blacks if I wasn't as emotionally charged as I was.
Yeah.
Because I'd go into a game, 20 minutes, I'd probably given away 4 or 5 penalties, and I'm absolutely bollocks because I cried during the anthems and the emotion and the lead up. But I remember facing the Haka twice.
Yep.
And Ali Williams there, big long tongue out. And I played against the All Blacks when they were in their prime. And the hysteria and the enormity of the Haka. Now this is just from my perspective, having been at a lot of the games during the World Cup.
Yep.
Do you think there's an argument around the Haka that it's done too much? Do you know when you play it against the likes of Italy and Uruguay, with no disrespect to them, and you're going to go out and put 60, 70, nearly 100 points on these teams, that maybe they should hold back the Haka and
For special occasions.
For special occasions.
Yeah.
Is that an argument or not?
No, because I think then you'll be contradicting why the All Blacks do the Haka. The All Blacks do the Haka because of its history. It was always a part of being an All Black, all the way back to 1905. The Invincibles did it, in a different manner, of course. It's slightly more choreographed, and it's a different looking beast than what it used to be back in the day. But the All Blacks don't do it for any advantage. They don't do it for any form of intimidation. They do it because it's part of our DNA. It's what we do, and it's what All Blacks do. You might have an All Black go out there and never plays again, or he plays one Test match, and if he didn't get the chance to do the Haka, he's not experienced what being an All Black's about. One thing I will say is, what we are taught about as All Blacks is we're taught about the history. We're talked to about the words, the meaning of the Haka, about the actions and what they signify. So we are very, very much in tune with what the Haka gives you, so that we respect it, and we love when the opposition respect it, and they confront the challenge in any way they want to. I love that. I think that's brilliant. They should be allowed to be a metre from you.
I wish that was the case.
Me too. It's not going to end up in a dust-up, is it? I was actually captain of the All Blacks in 1997. This was my second Test match as All Black captain when Richard Cockrell and Norm Hewitt headbutted each other, basically. And from there, that's when they started to pull us apart. That was the instigator of the making sure that the opposition weren't allowed to get too close to the Haka. It was a horrible moment for me. I got told off by the referee and we hadn't even kicked off. He said, "Got to keep your players under control." I was like, we haven't even started yet. But I certainly feel there's a place for the Haka. Keep an eye on the All Blacks. Everybody who feels that it gives the All Blacks an advantage, you watch the Haka, post the Haka. What happens is we don't do the Haka, jump up, tongues out, do this, whatever, and then kick off and get stuck into the opposition. They go, they regroup, they get in a circle, they take some water on board, and then they think about game plan. Okay, we're kicking off, where are we going, what are our zones? They regroup, they actually calm themselves down. We calm ourselves down, stop the heart from racing so much after doing the Haka. So there's no advantage there. It is just part of what we do.
Yeah, and it's amazing you sharing that, because people will be looking at this thinking, what an idiot to say, get rid of the Haka. I'm not saying that, but getting the information and getting the detail
It's
around
always
what
up
the
for
Haka
debate
is.
though, isn't it?
I think it's one of the greatest things. I think watching it in terms of the theatre, I 1,000,000% agree. I think there should be 5-10 metres between the two teams.
5,
and just,
I reckon. Let's skip to 5, eh?
Yeah, 5 metres.
So we can see the white in your eyes.
Talking about that, what is the perception of this All Blacks team back home? What are mates, what are family, What are the media saying? Are they underwhelmed, or will it all come down to this game?
I think again, I'll use the same word that I did before, there's uncertainty there about just how good this team is, how good they can be. If they're anything like me, they'll be thinking that this team is capable of beating anyone in the world, and we always believe that. The skill set's there, I believe the physicality's there. It's just about the approach that they have in terms of the game plan they want to implement, and when we've been struggling in the past, it's been against aggressive line speed defence, and the three teams that have brought that type of defence to the All Blacks and shut them down has been Ireland, France and South Africa. Out to in, cut the field off and make you play in a field that's supposed to be this big, they make you play here. And then there's space here, but to get the ball there is where we've really struggled. The All Blacks trend usually sort of sits here and it goes like that, yeah? And then it can just go back to there. At the moment, it's like that. And that's not good.
Yeah. Them three teams that you mentioned there, and it's really interesting, obviously we're close to the game and we get a great view of how them teams play, but the big physical defensive line, which means that the All Blacks are going to have to play through, right? Which means they need power.
That's right.
Which is arguably one of the things in the forwards. And how can you say this when they've got a player like Artie Surveyor, but they seem to be lacking a little bit of power up front?
Yep. Retallick and Scott Barrett, I think, are bringing the physicality you're talking about. And I think that's the combination they'll pick. I think Sam Whitelock will start on the bench. I saw a glint in the eye of Brodie Retallick in the last game out against Uruguay that I hadn't seen for a while. He was giving a bloke on the ground an absolute gobful and gave him a shove in the neck. And he looked genuinely pissed off and angry. That's what they need to be. If they've got that mindset and they're feeling that way, I think that physicality that you're talking about, they're capable of fronting on. But it has been missing, no doubt about it. I see your point and I don't disagree with it.
Some of the stuff that I've seen in the past, you might have mentioned the World Cup before, but it's the lack of depth in New Zealand, which has never been a thing. So two things: is there a lack of depth? And do you not think there's this kind of irony going into the game that actually a small part of the spine of the Irish team in James Lowe, Jamison Gibson Park and Bundy Aki are from New Zealand, and they're now turning out to be three of the best players in the world?
Yeah, it's very valid. I was just sort of dropping my head when you were talking then, trying to think. I don't think it's a lack of talent, but I do feel that, yes, in terms of depth of experience on the test arena, we've dropped the ball a bit. And I think in test matches where we've found ourselves in trouble, South Africa at Twickenham, in the French game when they started to get some momentum in that opening World Cup game, they injected players off the bench and they made an impact on the game. Bang, bang, the bomb squad came on at Twickenham. Boom, the French players came on. All of a sudden they're getting big carries out of them and they're making a difference. The New Zealand bench in both those games came on and the game stayed the way that it was. They didn't change the dynamic. And that's a depth thing in terms of experience, recognising where the game's at, trying to maybe innovate or change the way that the game's flowing, and it hasn't happened. And in the past, you could bring guys off the bench, TJ Perenaras and players that slightly play different to Aaron Smith, and they can change the structure of the game. They can challenge inside defenders, give other players space. You would, when you're playing Dan Carter, then if he went off, Beauden Barrett comes on, different type of player. So yeah, I do feel that at the moment we're struggling a little bit. This will be the huge thing. It'll be out probably maybe when people are watching this about the lineup. Where does McKenzie sit in the mix?
He's been unreal.
Yeah, but he's not played big test matches.
Exactly.
He's a massive talent and super energetic, and he can do things on the rugby field. But he's in a quarter-final knockout of the Rugby World Cup, and he's not been there before. So I don't feel that Ian Foster will trust to start him. And then it's like, well, if I bring him off the bench and he goes haywire and does all these sorts of things, is that going to help our structure? That's where we've gone a little bit sort of undeveloped recently.
Do you think they're looking at it from a New Zealand rugby union point of view? A couple of things in this. I almost felt there was a bit of overshare, so coaches would go over to New Zealand. New Zealand's a place to go, get in with the Crusaders, get in with the All Blacks, learn about all that, and they've come back with that knowledge over the last few years. My mate coaches at Leicester, he's been over on these programmes.
Yes.
The great, what was the great All Black before? Murray Mexted.
Yes.
As well, doing programmes over there. And it's now teams have taken that, run with it, and built on top of it. Where have the All Blacks fallen? Have they fallen short in that space in terms of development and evolution?
That's a great question, because I've been really banging the drum on this for quite a while now. I've felt ever since around post Lions, where obviously drawn series against the Lions at home. There was a steady decline in our innovation and the way that I felt that we needed to take our game to a different level, that the rest of the world were catching up. The Lions started to show that. Then you fast forward to World Cup 2019, exited by a very good England side. It's like, right, okay, if you don't recognise it now, things are a little bit bent out of shape. We've got to recognise that the rest of the world have grown. They've watched, they've seen, they've worked us out. And I think part of it, going back to your question, very much is about, we believe that everything that we do in our country with rugby, because we are the team that we are and have the history that we are, we know best. So we don't want to reach out. Like you said, you mentioned, people are coming to New Zealand, coaches are coming, they're getting inside the brain of New Zealand rugby, they're seeing our resources, they're seeing our talent, they're seeing the way that we operate. Why don't we do the same? But we don't. Yes, we've had success with coaches like Steve Hansen and Wayne Smith, who have been overseas, Graham Henry, coming back after coaching internationally and coaching the All Blacks and being successful. So it's like, hey, it works. But what we feel is like the rest of the world, we'll set the benchmark, and then they'll get up there, and then we'll keep evolving. I feel that it's a big Achilles heel of ours at the moment, that we're not prepared to go out and we should be sending coaches and personnel to Ireland and seeing what they are doing really, really well and why they're doing it well. To France, to England, but we won't, because we won't want to be seen to have to be learning from someone else, and that's just, it's foolish, because it's arrogant.
I saw Scott Robertson, Razor, when he was at the Crusaders. I was at Saracens.
Yep.
He came over. He would be the only man coach from New Zealand that's done that.
Yes.
And not that we're looking forward and saying that Ireland are going to beat New Zealand and New Zealand are going to be out of the World Cup. But if that does happen, is Scott Robertson, is Razor the saviour for the All Blacks? If that is what you need, do you need saving or not?
Oh, we do. We need, and not only regardless of what happens now, the exodus out of the All Blacks post Rugby World Cup is going to take a mountain of experience out of the mix. And you're talking about great All Blacks that are going to be missing. And when they leave the game, there's going to be a real reset in talent. Like, who's going to be the first five? Because Mo'onga's gone. Barrett probably won't be there. McKenzie, is he a 10 or is he a fullback? Just rack your brain. You tell me who's the next 10 in New Zealand. Would you even know who?
No.
No. And I don't either. There's some guys that play pretty well, like a Fergus Burt from the Crusaders. There's a Aidan Morgan. But these guys are green. So what Razor's going to have is he's going to have some really big holes to fill. So he'll get some sympathy in that, but absolutely we need a reset, and we need a refresh in our mindset. We're stale. What Ian Foster's inherited, he inherited from Graham Henry and Steve Hansen. He was there as assistant coach in those, and I think all the support staff were there as well. So there's a staleness that's come across the All Blacks that I feel needs refreshing, and he'll certainly bring that in, Razor. And the other thing he does is, you're right, he wants to, as an information appetite in his system. He literally goes to rugby league, he's been to American football, he's been to football, he's had people come into the Crusaders, coaches like Craig Bellamy from the Storm. He's a sharer, and he's just got an appetite for information and innovation on how to get better as a coach and how to make the teams he coaches better. And I think that's what we need.
Will he let a young Bundy, Aki, James Lowe, and Jameson Gibson Park, will he let them go
No
further
way,
afield?
Mate,
no?
Honestly. But look, you can sort of bang on about that a little bit and say, well, why, how stupid were we? But the reality is, to a degree, James Lowe, Gibson Park, and Bundy Aki were kind of struggling just to get Super Rugby starts. Let alone be anywhere near the All Blacks.
So hindsight and stuff like that, but they've emerged in that system now.
Yep.
As two of the, three of the top players in the world.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
Hops back
it is great. Hindsight's a great thing as well.
Isn't it? Like, these guys were, journeymen, struggling away, talented, yes, but weren't really fitting into the system in terms of they were going to be better players. Definitely weren't going to be All Blacks, and I mean that respectfully. Came over here and found a style of rugby that made them better players. Yes, they'd be All Blacks now, but it's being in this part of the world that turned them into international rugby players.
Brian O'Driscoll, when I spoke to him on the phone last week, because we love our code, but the enormity of this game, when we were just chatting about it casually as mates, a great analogy, 55-45 in favour of Ireland in terms of percent. That's probably a good way to look at it, isn't it? It's 55% with Ireland, 45% with the All Blacks. Is that how you see it, or would you shift it even further, either way?
No, I see it that way, and I certainly feel that in these clutch games, you know, it's where big players that grab their moments, and I categorically said this, and I mean this with the greatest respect. I didn't feel if Johnny Sexton was involved with Ireland that they would get anywhere near the final.
Yeah.
So you look at that, and you look at big game players that you spoke about before. Like Richie Mo'unga has not even done a quarter probably of what Johnny Sexton's achieved in the game. So when you talk 45-55, that's where that comes from, I think. And that ability to know in big matches, being at World Cups, you know, how to take opportunities, grab them, whether it's kicking a goal, whether it's kicking for territory, whatever it might be, making a play, you know, that sets someone away. That's that 10%. And that's why Ireland, I feel, deserve that 10%, because they've got more of that.
Yeah. So who are the other big players for the All Blacks if you're to win it?
I think he'll pick Beauden Barrett at fullback. He needs to have a massive game because he'll get harassed defensively by Ireland's attack. Their short passing game is unparalleled. Like they are literally, the way that they can manipulate in such a short zone, they'll make line breaks, and then he's got to clean that up. So massive responsibility on him, and equally, when we've been under pressure by a good defensive team like Ireland in the past, he tends to get this focus of just get the ball away from me, and he's kicking it aimlessly, and that's bringing the opposition into the game. So for me, he is a really pivotal player. Aaron Smith will deliver you the performance every time, so I'm not worried about him. The midfield will be solid enough. I worry about Rico defensively, but I think he'll get up for it. He'll love the challenge of this Irish duo in the midfield, and especially with Bundy playing such good rugby. So then you just got to go to the pack, don't you? Artie. Now, if Artie's up and he carries and he wants to be there and he gets turnovers, his energy just flows through to the rest of them. So for me, Beauden Barrett and Ardie Savea are the two pivotal guys for the All Blacks to be able to win this Test match. If they fire, we're in it, mate. We're in it.
One last question. Who's the player of the tournament so far?
Oh, wow. I certainly think in the last couple of games, Pernod has shown how classy he is. Yeah, wow.
I say Moneyball, I mean, he gets paid a fortune, so if you look at it like that. But it's, you know, in output and influences on the game.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been outstanding. But I'd probably have to say, in terms of form, right from the opening game, Bundy Aki.
Yeah, I knew you were going there.
Yeah, he's just been, man, he's been devastating.
How big does he look?
Yeah, fit and fast, and he wants the ball. You know, he wants to hit people as well. Yeah, I thought the way that he went through that South African side at times, who can defend and can tackle, sometimes he was hitting two defenders at a time and just leg drive. Yeah, he's been bloody good. So yeah, those two in particular have stood out to me. Are you surprised I didn't say a halfback?
No, I knew you were going to say Bundy Aki. We know our runners. We know.
Yeah, we do.
And they're the big influence on the game. Justin Marshall, absolutely love
mate,
that, mate.
Absolute pleasure,
Loved
mate. Thank you for having me.
All Blacks legend.